Welcome to Lesson 8, everyone. We're going to take the summary of Kendrick's performance, and then we're going to tie that in to my grandmother's hands. And on top of the interpretation that I shared the other day, which again, thank you for reviewing that video, I sent out an email this morning talking about power control in the Black body. And I have already made a decision that I am going to be switching email providers, but I will do that this weekend. So everyone is talking about the up here interpretations of Kendrick's performance, but I want to take it a little bit further and have a conversation about what this means for Black people and Black liberation. So when I started sharing my lessons here with you all, I talked about how teaching is liberation work for many Black professors, Black teachers, and Black educators, through specifically from the North American or US lens, but also across the diaspora, because we also have other brothers and sisters here that represent the diaspora that share many similar experiences. And I woke up feeling excited. I know many people that I spoke to feel like you have a little bit more oomph, a little bit more pep in your step. And I want us to look at chapter 20 of Cultural Healing for African Americans, because I think it's really important for us to start having these conversations, particularly from the Uncle Tom or the Django characterization that Samuel L. Jackson played throughout Kendrick's performance. So, separate from that, which I highly encourage you to go look up that character and complete an analysis on him separately. Here, I want to focus on how to really feel empowered and emboldened. And on page 253, it reads, "Raise up African American leaders, artists, writers, speakers, activists, and elders who have addressed some of their own racialized trauma." So I know many activists and community folks that have been speaking about, we fought so hard for this and look at what's happening now. And I think it is our responsibility to sit back and really and truly listen and learn from them. One of the things I often tell people is, don't forget you're going to grow old one day. Growing old is a privilege. And so we have to get past that ageism that a lot of us have and be able to sit with our mouths shut and listen to the wisdom that they have, that they can share with us in terms of their experience. Of course, we can also recognize that the people that we have looked up to are human. They are flawed. They have issues just like the rest of us do. But from an overall perspective, there is a lot that we can learn from these individuals that have been and continue to fight the fight. And I want to remind you, Ruby Bridges is still alive. So the next thing that we read in my grandmother's hands is, "Learn to teach about traumatic retentions and grow out of them." So we often hear about healing and what that looks like. And I want to refer you back to the video that I posted about clean versus dirty pain. And here it reads, "Like all human beings, we African Americans need to hold on to the strongest and most resilient parts of ourselves and grow out of our weakest ones. We need to do this as individuals, as a group, and in our culture." And to me, that is what Kendrick's performance really and truly sparked for a lot of us. And I really hope we continue to work through that and examine and explore for ourselves why we are starting to feel the feelings that we currently have now in terms of having that joy. And to continue, it says, "Traumatic retentions often stay with us because they combine both strengths and weaknesses. With time, careful attention, and practice, we can tease out and teach others to tease out what is beneficial from what is harmful. Think of my grandmother whipping me up and my brothers to help us learn to be safe. We definitely needed that lesson, but my grandmother could have taught us without using the willow stitch or the switch, which I'm very familiar with. Like most other traumatic retentions, the act of whipping black bodies, first by white bodies, then by other black ones, was passed down through generations until it looked like culture. We African Americans also need to grow out of any traumatic retention around our African bodies. Thinking darker skin is inferior to lighter skin, curly hair is worse than straight hair, a wide nose less attractive than a narrow one, and so on. We would also be wise to stop calling each other by the N-word, even in an affectionate or ironic way. I'm going to skip the other references. We need to call out all such traumatic retentions to each other and recognize them in ourselves. And then the last thing that I'm going to stay or talk about, there are technically 2 points. I'm going to read both lines and then provide you with your kind of call to action in your homework. And the 2 lines are learn and teach about historical and intergenerational trauma, and learn and teach about African history and cultures. A basic understanding of inherited trauma can help people put their lives into context, comprehend why they experience some of the things they experience and do some of the things they do, and begin the process of healing. All of us African Americans, especially our children, can benefit from an awareness of the trauma pyramid. And then skipping down, it's common for African Americans to trace back our bloodline only as far as our ancestors' arrival in America. When we do this, though, we may unconsciously equate our entire history as Black human beings with oppression and violation. This, of course, is not the case. In doing so, or in doing this, we diminish our lineage by limiting it to a dozen or so generations. Let's enlarge our history to include those times and places in which our ancestors' bodies were free of racialized trauma. This means teaching our children about the art, stories, and history of African cultures. I'm going to close with that because I also talked about the harmony circle in terms of a potential seance circle that you can see in the performance as well. And I very quickly had folks being like, And I want to point out again, many of our ancestors who came here through the transatlantic slave trade or by other means were usually forced. They were not asked. And I know some of you are going to say, well, there were also Africans that enslaved people too. Why aren't you talking about them? That's playing the victim. Miss me with that, okay? Please and thank you. Again, I will go back to the Uncle Toms and the Django's of the world, and I'm going to ask you to do your research on those individuals, okay? We can also refer back to the all skin folk and kinfolk line as well. So I'm not going to focus on that because there are bad apples in every bunch. And if you let them sit there, that trauma retention can be pervasive. So we're going to focus not on that, but on how to honor the fact that those people were stripped of their religious and cultural practices, that many of them had to use Christianity in order to still practice, which is why many spiritual girlies are finding their way back to that spiritual practice, especially with hoodoo and voodoo. And we have to be mindful of that and respectful of how people practice. So with that, my question to you and your homework is going to be this. I want you to take some time, especially if you are African American or Black. I want you to sit down and just do a little map of who you are. Who are your parents? Who are your grandparents, cousins, uncles, sister, whatever? And I want you to think about your childhood, think about your current state, and just the events that shaped who you are today, and have a conversation with your family about it. And note, you might need to take that to your therapist too. But have a good day.